A rollover is the effect that you get on web pages when you take your cursor over things like buttons and maybe some other things, where it looks as though you're activating something, it gives some sort of feedback to the user. What's happening here is as I roll the cursor over, the browser is substituting a different image, in this case a button with a grey background and a drop shadow, rather than the black with white overlay text you can see there. And we're going to look at how ImageReady, the recently deceased cousin of Photoshop, will help you do that. ImageReady is a really good program. It's a shame that they've thrown it away in CS2. If you've still got a copy, don't uninstall it from your machine. It's well worth having there. For the first part of this tutorial, we're going to look at layer styles, how to create and apply them. I've created a document which has got a series of buttons, and if we glance down on the layers palette, we can see those buttons are in fact layer groups. Just going to turn the visibility on and off of those and you can see that. And the layer groups themselves contain further layers, which are text layers with the button label, and a background layer, which is a vector shape, as you can see. Now over here we have the styles palette. If I just go and click on this tab here, we can see a whole load of preset styles that Adobe have been generous enough to equip us with, and we can go and look through these styles, see various presets. If I take my cursor over the top of them, we can see the name of the style, and if I drag the style from the style palette onto the top of the layer marker here, the layer panel, if I let go, we can see the rather lovely tortoise shell effect has been applied there. And if we look on the layer palette itself, you can see that in fact the style is just an accumulation of numerous effects which have been added at the bottom there. So I was going to undo that, and we're going to look at how we can go and create a style which we can then apply to all our layers in turn, or use for, as you're going to see later, the rollover effect that we're going to be creating. So I'm going to come to my Inferno layer, make sure that's selected, the background layer that is, and at the bottom of the layer palette I'm going to click to add a layer effect, and I'm going to start off by adding a drop shadow. So that's added the drop shadow there, and I'm also going to add to this a colour overlay. So I'm just going to come down and click on here, and rather than this very infernal red, I'm going to go and change that to the grey colour, which will match the bar which is sitting beneath the menu items there. And if I click OK, there we can see that layer in effect. And here on the layer style palette there's a button saying new style, which will allow me to save these settings out into the styles palette so I can use them again on other layers in my document, or indeed in other documents in my in Photoshop. So I'm going to click new style, and I'm going to name this grey shadow, like so. And I'm going to OK that, and I also OK out of the layer style dialog box. My new style is added to the bottom of the list here. Now we can see it says grey shadow if I leave my cursor over the top of it for long enough. I'm just going to undo the initial applying of the layer style to my background there, and I'm going to check that indeed grey shadow does work by just dragging that over, and I can see that I've managed to apply that. And so that's the first part of what I need to do to create some rollover button effects. Now before we get on with the main body of the second part of the tutorial, I'm just going to revert my buttons PSD document back to the point where I hadn't applied any style to any background. And now we're going to go through the process of how to create a rollover button. The first part of the process is to slice our document into the separate buttons that we want to export. And we're going to do that using this, the slice tool. With the slice tool, if I just drag around the areas that I want to export, I'm going to take the button out right to the edge of the next button. I'm going to take out a white area at the bottom as well. I'm planning for that in my design. I'm just going to go through and drag a new slice for each one of these. And as I'm doing this, notice that here on the web content palette it's adding slices here. It's going to go and carry on. And if I need to adjust any of the slices, I come back here to the Slice Select tool, and here say on slice 2, where I want it to extend to the edge there, I can move it over and I can move slice 3 back. So they're all butting up along the edge there. So there's my slices 1, 2, 3 and 4. If I use the Slice Select tool and click on the first one, there we can see in the Slices palette that ImageReady rather has named these button 01, button 02, button 03, button 04. The buttons it took from the name of the file. And isn't in fact particularly useful to me. These are the names that eventually when we export these buttons, the button names will be exported with these names in their title as buttons 01, 02, 3, 4, etc., which isn't very handy. So I'm just going to drag my first button to the top just to replicate the order these are coming in. I'm going to double click in its name and I'm going to call it Inferno button, like so. Likewise for my second one. Third. And fourth. So my slices are named, and as I click through onto each one we can see there is the appropriate slice. Now what I want to do is make it so that as I take my cursor over one of these buttons, a rollover state is invoked. And I can do that by coming back to my slices palette. I've got my Inferno button selected, and if I come down to the bottom of the web content palette, here the Create Rollover State button. If I click on that, we get another panel within the Slices palette here. So you can see for the rollover state for my Inferno button. What I'm going to do now is go and make the changes that I want to see when my cursor's over the button. In this case, if I go over to the Inferno button background, find the style that I created in the last part of the tutorial, there it is, grey shadow. I'm going to go and drag that over. And we can see that effect there. So taking us back to the web content palette, Inferno button, there it is. And as you take your cursor over, the rollover effect, that's what it's going to look like. And I can go and preview that effect by coming to the ImageReady toolbar, and there's a preview in, and I've got mine set for Firefox, and maybe for Safari or Internet Explorer on yours, depending on how your preferences are set up. I'm just going to click on that, and this takes it through. It shows me a whole bunch of code, but at the top there's a preview of what my rollover will look like. And I'm pleased enough with that. So I'm going to close Firefox and return through to ImageReady, and I'm going to go and do the same thing for the other buttons. I'm going to go and click on Prune here. I'm going to go and add a rollover state. There it is. Back over to my Layers palette. I'm going to close down the Inferno buttons layer group and go and open up the Prune buttons layer group. Select its background and drag that over. There's my second rollover state. Again, we can see if I go back and forth between the two. I'm just going to carry on through and do this. So I'm going to add the one for the free button. Oh, I think I'll just move that up the layer stack. Makes more sense to me there. And there I have it. And if I go and preview again in my browser, there you can see those rollover buttons being created. The final step for this remains for me to go and save these buttons out so I can go and use them in Dreamweaver or Go Live or any other web editor. So off I go to, oops, lost focus there, off I go to the File menu. I'm going to choose Save Optimize. And ImageReady prompts me to ask me what I want to do with this. Now, you can get ImageReady to generate HTML for you. That's your choice entirely. I'm not that pleased with that, so I'm going to ask it to generate the images only. I'm going to get it to just take out the slices that I created, the user slices. And I'm going to output that into a folder that I've got waiting for me on the desktop called ImageReady Output. I'm just going to go and save those. And then if I come out into the Finder here, here's my ImageReady output. ImageReady's created a subfolder here called Images, and here are my various states of button. If I just go and change the view mode here, see, there they are with their up and over states, ready for me to go and bring them into Dreamweaver or to any other web editor.